Okay, we are live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this special called meeting of the Signal Mountain Town Council. The date is May 27th. It's a Wednesday, and this is an electronic meeting, and we'll just go ahead and get underway with the pledge, and we'll follow that by a moment of silence. So, Sam, if you would like to present a flag for us, we'd appreciate that.
Dan, your audio sounds funny to me.
I'm just in an echoey room, probably. Sorry. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice.
Liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
All right, thank you everyone for being here and for sticking with what seems like always a rather arduous budget process. Carol, will you begin by taking roll?
Vice Mayor Amy Speak. Not present. Councilmember Cheryl Graham.
Here.
Councilmember Bill Lusk. Councilmember Susanna Murdoch.
Here.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Here. And just to be clear, is everyone else hearing me? Do I need to turn my mic up or anything?
Nope.
Your audio sounds better than it did. I couldn't hear you for a minute.
I was probably being wimpy.
It was kind of I don't know. It sounded
Okay.
like you were in a tunnel.
Okay, that could be an electronic glitch. So the next thing we have is citizens' opportunity to address council. And Sam, if you have the citizen on the line, remind them to state their name and address. And you are muted, Sam.
Okay, go right ahead. You're going to hear a delay. If you wouldn't mind muting your YouTube feed, and then you can, the floor is yours.
Sam, you want to verify that everything's okay? Sam, are you hearing us? We're not hearing anything. So if someone was speaking, was anyone else hearing anything, just to be clear?
No.
So if you, are you using your phone?
I was using my desk phone.
Oh, you probably need to call on your mobile phone and put it on speaker so that it's loud. Does your desk phone have a speaker? Yeah, we're not hearing you at all, Sam. You're muted. Okay. Sorry about that, folks.
Hey, Sam's video stream, he's like, I'm not receiving him. I can't, he's sort of, it's still shot. And your audio and your video is kind of not an excellent connection like it usually is, Dan. Is anybody else noticing that?
Nope.
No, I think it's on your end. If you could move perhaps closer to your server, that might help. to
All
your,
right,
to your
sorry about that.
wireless
I
phone.
have, are you all ready? I have Mr. Strickland on the line. Hopefully this will work better.
Okay,
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Strickland. Still can't hear?
still can't hear. Do you have your phone on speaker and turned up as loud as it'll go?
Yes,
You're
sir.
putting it near your computer speaker?
It is on top of it, basically.
Everyone
me-
else mute, but everyone mute except Sam, and see if that changes it.
Still can't hear? Y'all still can't hear?
Here, would you see if, could you send him a Zoom link and see if we can pull him in that way?
Absolutely.
Sorry, folks. There probably is time to get that extra cup of coffee. For anyone who's dropping in on this exciting affair, we're waiting for a technical glitch to get resolved so we can put a caller on the line. So thanks for your patience. If it's any consolation, I read that an entire major network news broadcast didn't get aired one evening. They tried to start it and they had a technical problem, could not resolve it. Again, for anyone who's joining us, we're waiting for a technical glitch to be resolved before we continue the meeting. Thanks for your patience.
All right, terribly sorry. He will be dialing in just one moment.
All right, thank you. This is maybe a good sign that what we're going to need to do is set everybody up to Zoom in. We did the call in last time, Sam. I had a fairly elaborate setup and I was in my studio.
Okay.
And it's probably the case that my speakers were able to override any muting that was taking place within Zoom. And just another technical setup is when I'm in my studio, I override all of Zoom's preferences.
Okay.
And that might have solved it here if you,
Very good.
now that I think about it.
And he's just making his way through the meeting ID and password portion.
Okay.
Make it into the waiting room. Once he does, I'll let him in.
All right.
Excuse me, he's calling me back, so there may be an issue. You all want to move on and maybe we move this?
No, I don't.
here?
I really don't think we should, because this has been something that has been of major concern to the caller, and I think we should do it by the book. And I apologize for the time. What's the serenity prayer? We should live with the serenity to accept the things we can't change, courage to change the things we can, and have the wisdom to know the difference. And if anyone else would like to read any poetry at any point, that would be your best opportunity.
All right, there was an issue on that end, so he has now been sent the actual Zoom invitation. He will hopefully be live with us, video and audio, in just a moment.
Okay. I like your sky, Bill.
Okay. All right, I have Mr. Strickland. Oh, well, I had Mr. Yes. He should be coming in right now.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry for the technical problems, Don, but thanks for your patience.
That's okay. As Harry knows, I'm just a troublemaker anyway.
For the record, go ahead and say your name and address, and then
Don Strickland, 1058 Whippoorwill Drive. Good morning. My address concerns the SMEPF MAC proposal and the MAC budget. At the outset, I note that Angie Landrum, president of the Preservation Fund, stated in her letter that in the last 2 years, quote, Preservation Fund donors have invested over $248,000 in building repairs and improvements, unquote. I've seen some of the work, particularly in the auditorium, and it's very well done. It is impressive that the Preservation Fund has been able to raise that amount of money, which they use for the MAC. I look forward to reviewing their financials. But that makes me curious as to why the Preservation Fund has not projected any revenue for fundraising for the coming fiscal year? Or if they have, why they did not mention it when proposing their budget, especially since they included a capital improvement of $56,000 for an HVAC, which the town does not have in its recommended budget. If the Preservation Fund has been so successful at fundraising, it could invest $248,000 in the MAC in 2 years. I wonder why the Preservation Fund cannot raise funds in the coming year. The budget proposal by the Preservation Fund under the heading Town Provides is for a total of $46,859. Consists of items designed to maintain the building, electricity, gas, insurance, etc. Although there is a curious line item for piano tuning. The Preservation Fund has recognized that because the MAC is closed and will be for the foreseeable future, there is little need to budget for employees. The Preservation Fund proposal includes, however, as I noted earlier, a capital improvement of $56,000 for an HVAC, which might be needed. But is it needed now? And the amount might be a righteous figure, but if it is, why did the town not budget for it? Who is making the decisions here? The grand total of the Preservation Fund's proposed budget is $102,859. Then, however, the proposal refers to a, quote, predicted, unquote, budget of $183,365. It is unlikely the prediction will come to pass, although the figure is from the town's recommended budget. And I'd like to make a few brief comments about that. Please note that the recommended budget for the MAC for the coming fiscal year includes salaries, benefits, and taxes totaling $107,873. The largest portion of that amount was for the director of the MAC, but she was fired last year. She was paid for part of last year and she hasn't been paid this year. Yet the reestimate of the salaries, etc., is identical to the budgeted amount for the current fiscal year. The reestimate is so profoundly incorrect that it cannot be a good faith, realistic estimate. But wait, the recommended budget for the coming fiscal year is $110,617, which is more than this year. That figure is preposterous. At the MAC board meeting yesterday, the town manager admitted he has made no effort to hire anyone for the director's position and has no plan to do so in the foreseeable future. Why would you? The MAC's closed and it's going to be closed for some time. He also said the intent to lay off the part-time workers likely this week, and I understand that's been done. Yet there is a recommended budget for the MAC of $110,617 for salaries, which is more than the current year. That's astounding. I will mention in passing that the budget for the current fiscal year includes expected revenue from the MAC of $34,893, and the re-estimated amount is for the same. The MAC, of course, has been closed and is expected to be closed for some time. So the re-estimate is questionable at best. Rising to a level of absurdity is the fact that the projected revenue in the coming fiscal year is the exact same amount. This is more than smoke and mirrors. I will conclude by referring again to the Preservation Fund's proposed budget. As I mentioned earlier, their predicted budget is $183,365, identical to the town's recommended budget. We know, however, that amount is drastically inflated, as it includes $110,000 for employees when there won't be any for the foreseeable future, certainly not a director this year, a position which accounts for over 1/2 of the total. The prediction, therefore, should not come to pass because there is no need for the town to fund the MAC as recommended. The Preservation Fund thinks the MAC needs $102,859 less the Preservation Fund's estimate of $25,000 in revenue to operate in the coming year. The MAC board approved that budget yesterday. The town council, therefore, should budget no more than $102,859 for the MAC in the coming fiscal year, if the council approves the HVAC as a capital improvement. Thank you. I'll leave the meeting now.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking the time to write that out, and hopefully some of your concerns will be addressed during the meeting. Let me get back to the agenda. Okay. And we'll come back to those. I made notes. I made as much as I could. If we need to respond to try to get some of those questions in writing, we can also do that. But I think some of those concerns will be addressed. We are now to the part of the meeting where we're going to do a performance review of the town manager. Let's see, is everybody present still? That's Sam that is muted. All right, there is no formal process for this. This is laid out in the town manager's contract, item 12. It says that he will receive an annual performance review. Everything that the town council does under Tennessee law is public. Doesn't mean everything that the town council does is comfortable. And this can feel awkward in that you're reviewing someone publicly. But we followed a performance review sheet that was sent to us and has been used across the state. So we're just going to begin with that. We can take this any direction we'd like. I'll open by saying I did my performance review. Oh, and I should say that everyone who submitted a performance review based on the, I believe that form came from MTAS. Can you guys unmute so that it's just not me rambling here? Give me some help. I believe that was a document from MTAS. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. Thank you, Harry. In addition to that, you may recall that when I did the state of the town, which is also required by our charter, I took that opportunity to do a performance review myself at that point. And so in addition to what we've all done on that other piece of paper, I just want to revisit that for just a moment to say that I had an opportunity to speak to every department, not every department head, because I mistakenly did not talk to the director of finance privately, and that was my mistake. So I apologize for that, Carol. But I have communicated with Carol about other things since then, so we've had some time to talk. Our employees are happy with the way the town is run. Every employee wishes they had more money for their department. Every employee wishes decisions were made more quickly. That's the state of government, though. It's not easy for things to happen, and the town manager is the gatekeeper for not just for some of the decisions, but for the speed in which the decisions are implemented. But I can just tell you that from speaking to all the employees, I got not one negative review back for our town manager. And our town manager has been here for 6 years. In town manager years, that's reckoned like dog years. That's a long time to have one town manager in place. So that's just kind of my opening statement. I think this is fair to do. I want to read, and again, sorry for the mildly rambling nature of this, but we have no particular guidance for how this is to be done. I'm going to cut to the final statements of I'm trying to pull up the document. So if you'll give me just a moment. How did I end up not without that in here? If you give me just a moment, I really need to pull that document up so that I can read it accurately. Here it is. So all of you have a PDF that has that contains the town manager's sheet that we used for review. And the process for that was we waited. Everyone sent those sheets to me, and I promised and stuck to my word that I wouldn't look at anybody else's. And as soon as I got everyone who sent them in, I would send them out. And so that's what the process was. So all of these were done independent of each other. And just to give those who are watching the idea of the kinds of questions that were asked, We rated on a scale of 5 being excellent, 1 being poor, individual characteristics, personal skills and status, relations with elected members of the governing body, policy execution, reporting, citizen relations, staffing, supervision, and fiscal management, and community. And then there was a brief narrative evaluation at the end, and I'm going to jump to the narrative portion of mine. No one else has to do what I'm doing. This is up to you as to how you want to chime in on this. But the narrative evaluation questions and my answers were, what would you identify as the manager's strengths expressed in terms of principal results achieved during the rating period? My response is, this is an interesting question to ponder considering the subjective nature of the job as it relates to issues faced by the town of Signal Mountain. With that in mind, it's noteworthy that the most controversial issues in my tenure were not created by Boyd Veal. Rather, they were navigated well and conscientiously by him. And I think this has been a noteworthy accomplishment. You all know we've had some contentious issues to deal with. Next question was, what performance areas would you identify as most critical for improvement? In almost every area where I have scored Boyd with a 4 or less on my evaluation, that score would probably have been at least 1 tick higher if we had a software-based program management and issue tracking system in place to allow easy status monitoring by counselors and citizen. And I'll just add to that gatekeeper status is a gate that's moving constantly. There's a lot that happens. I wish we had a better tracking system in place for what's underway. What constructive suggestions or assistance can you offer the manager to enhance performance? I just said, see my prior answer. And the final subjective question was, what other comments do you have for the manager, e.g. priorities, expectations, goals, or objectives for the new rating period? And my reply was, Boyd has made it clear that he is nearing retirement. Now's a good time for us to discuss and document his institutional knowledge as someone who has faithfully worked for our town for almost 30 years now. The Signal Mountain Town Council should actively utilize his experience in creating and documenting long-range planning goals while examining the strengths and weaknesses of current systems in light of continuity. I'd like to see more time spent across departments, systematizing and utilizing consistent best community communications practices, using our website, email, and various forms of instant messaging. During my time as a council member, not much has gone wrong administratively, but it would be unwise and probably even foolish to think that even if you did everything perfectly, somebody wouldn't find something that needed to be changed. It's that system of even if your company is profitable and doing well, if you hire a consultant, the consultant's probably not going to come in and go, you're fine. The consultant's going to find something that you need to address. And so I think we as a council fill that role as well as do citizens. So with that, I'd like to open this up to anybody else who wants to chime in.
I'll read my narrative evaluation answers if you like. I think Boyd's doing an excellent job, by the way. So but anyway, I'll start with that. So what would you identify as the manager's strengths expressed in terms of the principal results achieved during the rating period? Boyd Veal is ideally equipped to be in the position of town manager for Signal Mountain. He is a true stakeholder in our community and brings many strengths and abilities to his job. Having lived on the mountain for so many years, serving in law enforcement and now as town manager, I see him as extremely adept and qualified to serve our town in this capacity. My overall view of departments and fiduciary oversight Boyd provides is excellent. One area I do see as an opportunity for improvement is in the area of personnel oversight and review. A formalized process in this area allows employees and staff to know what they need to improve and what they're doing well. Annual reviews are good for the overall health of any organizational professional structure. He does provide great oversight, but formalizing the review process will only make things even better than they already are. And then for other comments, I said Boyd is doing an excellent job for Signal Mountain residents. I applaud the great work he continually does for the council and appreciate his dedicated service He has a great temperament for this work, and it serves him well. He doesn't get too excited or too downtrodden. Staying calm and rational is essential in this type of professional environment, and Boyd has this demeanor in spades. He is worthy of a salary increase.
I think more important than my view of Boyd's performance is what our residents think about Boyd's performance. So I received this email yesterday evening. It should be showing on the screen now.
It is.
Great. I could read this, I suppose, but this was a pretty good review by someone who has had a fair amount of interaction with Boyd, and I think it speaks volume to all of the comments that we've heard thus far.
Thanks, Bill. Cheryl?
Well, as usual, mine is rather short and sweet. Dan does with words, I do with silence, apparently. The strengths to me were Boyd's attention to detail and his drive to keep the town financially strong, both things that are incredibly important to me, and his ability to stay calm in stressful situations, along with being a strong role model for all town employees. The one thing I would like to see that maybe is a little improvement is communication. And he knows that because I've gotten on to him a lot. The communication to me is key, and any improvement in communication is going to help a lot. That was my next thing too, improve communication skills. But the other comment I had was exceptionally short and sweet. Keep up the good work. I mean, I'm happy with where we are, and could not be happier than having Boyd as our town manager.
So it's noteworthy that no one expressed dissatisfaction with our town manager. Am I accurate in that assessment,
Yes.
Councilor?
Yes. I think nobody is perfect, and we all, so filling this out, I was, just putting fives all the way down, and, but you also have to keep things in perspective. I mean, everybody, it doesn't matter who you are or what role you serve. There's always going to be areas in which we can improve in our respective job performances. So trying to criticize Boyd, it's not really, or constructive criticism, I would say, it's not something I've really spent a lot of time focusing on, because I'm always so impressed with the quality of his work. So I just would like to say, we're talking about some areas that are opportunities for improvement, but that by no means is any kind of negative reflection on the job he does. He is a wonderful public servant, and we're very fortunate to have him in this capacity.
And it works from a couple of standpoints in that the concerns, I think I heard communication in there, a couple of times. The fact that communication could be better doesn't necessarily mean, and I'm not really speaking to Boyd specifically here, no one ticks every box for every job. And if you had someone who was perceived as a tremendous communicator, they would probably also be perceived as someone who talks too much. So there's a light and a dark side to almost all traits. Some of it, though, I will say, is systemic, in that our town manager, because of the size of our budget and the size of our town, wears more hats than many town managers would. And the town manager doesn't have a spokesperson. The town manager doesn't have a PR department. So everything that gets handled and not to make it sound like it's chaos, but it's things get handled. It's triage every day, because when you run a public works department and you run all of these things, there is always something that someone would like to see done differently, and there's a pothole somewhere that somebody's car bumped in, and it's going to be addressed. So you don't get to manage the flow of that coming in and out. So I think some of those communications issues are just based on the sheer workload faced in a town of our size with citizens that have the high quality of life expectations that we have. And I get that. And it's not to say that those aren't legitimate concerns, but some of them, there's not a good answer. And even what I'm suggesting in a management, in a system-wide review system where we could see the status of projects, that's a fairly tall order, and there are entire departments devoted to those kinds of things in large governments. So, what we're asking for may also be unrealistic. So, does anybody have anything else to add to this portion? So I think what is on the table and why this is, first off, it hadn't been done, as far as I know, for this town manager since he began. And it was supposed to have been done every year according to his contract. So I would like to see us work on formalizing this for next year. And just one suggestion to ponder for all the counselors, in working on the state of the town address, because I got to meet with all the department heads individually, we could all participate in that. And we could make that a day dedicated to town manager review, so that just do it round robin, one at a time. So, and I know it would be one extra thing added to the calendar for all the department heads, but any thoughts on that idea?
I think it sounds like a good suggestion. I mean, we need to put something in place in order to ensure that we meet the requirements of his contract. And not just because it's in his contract, but because it's just a healthy exercise to go through.
Right.
So I would support that. And I would, I'll participate and help in any way I can.
Right. And I think in order to meet the requirements of the contract, we're always going to have a town manager, and that requirement should probably always be there. And as a council, we can make it better for future councils to formalize this process a bit. That's one suggestion. If anybody else has other suggestions, anybody see any downside in doing it that way?
No.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll ask that this, Carol, if you wouldn't mind, I know this is a bit long term, but if you wouldn't mind bringing this back up in July, or it's assuming that we've finished the budget by that point, and we can try to formalize it and get it into, I don't know, into the municipal code. We'll find out where it needs to go. Harry, where would that go?
I don't know, Dan, off the top of my head. You're talking about a provision in the town manager's contract.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not presently codified at all. The code could be amended, I guess, to provide for that annual review of the town manager. But if you're going to have it in the contract for the town manager every year, you don't really need to have it in the code.
Okay.
Just need to come up with a method to do it.
All right. Just the councils. When you become a town council member, you don't get a piece of paper that says, make sure you do all these things. And that is not being passed forward because it was never passed forward to us. I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't read his contract. And that's just, you're not going to read every document to know what everything says. So what I'm looking for is a way to formalize the fact that it needs to be done as a step. So, and things get done by tradition most of the time until they don't. All right. So brings us to the point where this Venn diagram crosses our budget. In the last meeting, we're sent the pay path that the town manager has been on. He did not receive a cost of living increase last year. He will receive a cost of living increase this year. I think we should consider a raise for a town manager that's been with us for 6 years. Scandal-free, just sometimes a big thing in town managerdom. So there's two things on the table. Should we do that, and what amount? Open to suggestions. To the first question, should we do that?
Yes.
The cost of living increase annually is normally like 1 or 2%, 1.5.
The Social Security COLA for the last 2 years is 1.6%.
Any other thoughts?
So he didn't get it last year. And is not budgeted to receive it this year.
No, he is budgeted to
He is
receive.
budgeted to receive it this year.
Right. Yeah, so this suggestion is for a performance-based raise based on a review. I'm recommending we do that. And I think it's probably proper in this case for us to do this in two separate motions. So I'm going to recommend we give Boyd a performance-based raise this year. I make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
I guess since there's consensus among all of us that he is worthy of an increase, we just need to determine what we feel like the recommended amount should be. So
There is a motion on the table.
Right. Yeah, so we'll deal with this motion first. So if there is no other discussion, I'll pause this moment. Carol, will you read the motion to be clear?
That you're recommending giving Boyd Veal a performance-based raise this year.
All those in favor say, well, take a roll call, please.
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
yes,
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. So this is one of those cases where we really need to have our discussion prior because we've got to figure out how we're going to form a motion working as a body. The first things that come to mind, and Bill, you have more experience with this than I do. I'm thinking either in terms of percentages or in terms of hourly rate increases. Your thoughts on that?
Percentages.
Okay. Anyone have any thoughts about that? Want to form a motion?
I think percentage too, for sure.
Okay. So let's move in that direction. Bill, again, you come more from that corporate world. Folk musicians don't generally get raises. It's either play louder or paddle faster.
For some reason, I feel a bus coming. I think, Boyd's performance has been excellent, as everybody's noted. And typically, in my prior life, those raises were somewhere between 5 and 10%.
That was kind of where I was. My thought was
Okay.
between 5 and 10. I wrote 8% down.
Other thoughts?
Can I get a clarification? I'm sorry to be the finance person at this moment. But when you do your motion, could you make it clear if the percentage is given before or after the COLA?
Very good. Thank you. Bill, what do you think about that?
I would say after the COLA.
Anybody else have thoughts on that? Honestly, as a self-employed working musician for a long time, those numbers feel high to me, and this has nothing to do with Boyd. but those numbers just feel high to me. I would be thrilled to know that I could make 5 or 10 or 8% more at any time. I'm not saying I'm against it, but we are dealing with a very lean budget this year, and we need to be careful. I don't know if it's reasonable to. First, I would suggest that we not vote on this today, but we create what would be voted on at the next meeting. Maybe that's not a good idea. Let's talk about that, because I'd like to see the numbers back from our finance director as to what the actual budget impact is on that. What do you guys think about that?
I think that sounds, I'd like to see maybe, a scenario with a 5% and a, 7.5 and % increases. What the budget impact on top of the cost of living, or 3 and 5 and 7, or I don't know, whatever y'all think.
There have been years where Bo did not get a raise.
He's never actually gotten a performance raise, ever.
Yeah. So in my mind, that kind of justifies a little more generosity. If you want to call it that.
If I may, I've notably tried to sit here and listen, not say anything, but I know Carol's got things spinning around in her head right now that she may not say, but the decision is totally yours. This is not something I asked for. I'm very, very much appreciative of the comments and what you're working on now. So I hate to sound pushy, but if we don't have this built into the budget at the next meeting, that is the first meeting in June, then we don't have a complete budget to have the first reading on. So that complication is the only thing that I wanted to make sure was on the radar. Beyond that, again.
Fair enough. That's why I asked the question. We just need to know how it affected the budget process. Okay.
Why don't we go around and, I'd like to know what Cheryl and Bill, what each of you all think in terms of a percentage increase would be fair, and what your recommendation is.
I think 7.5 is, if I was going to make a motion right now, I would make a motion for a 7.5% increase. And I would make the motion that is including the COLA, not in addition to the COLA. That's the way I would format that, but I'm, again, completely open, and I'm not forming that as a motion at the moment. I'm just putting that out there. And to Bill's point, I agree. He hasn't had any performance raises since he's been here, and he's done a good job for us, and we want him to stick around as long as he will. I think there's one other point to add to that. No, but anyway, that's where I am. Anybody else? Cheryl, you want to talk?
Yeah, I'm thinking I was leaning more towards 7%, not including the COLA.
7 not?
Not including. Mm-hmm. To include it, but the 7%
Is on top.
is on top. Yeah. Keeping in mind that there has not been a performance increase in all this time.
Susanna, did you put a number down?
I mean, I'm in the range where you all are. I kind of agree with Cheryl. I feel that feels good. 7% on top of the COLA.
And Bill?
I like your 7.5% number, but have that on top of the COLA. Just trying to make up,
I remember the other thought.
passage of time.
I'm sorry for the interruption. I remember the other thought that passed through my empty head a few minutes ago. To be accurate, there was one pay adjustment for Boyd Beal that was part, I believe, of his first year. It's when the pay, but it was an across the board pay adjustment, and it's when the town went to its ranked system of pay. So that did modify. Just want to make sure that we're all aware of that. And you guys have all seen all those numbers, so you know where we are. All right, I'm, you know, that 0.5% is nothing that I'm willing to quibble about. So I will make a motion that we adjust by a percentage of 7.5%. I want to not do that yet. Carol, what are we missing?
I have some quick numbers for you, just right off the cuff. Under Dan Landern's proposal, it amounts to $3.67 an hour. Cheryl and Susanna's comes to $3.47, and Councilmember Lusk comes to $3.72.
Again, we're talking about pennies there.
What was Dan's?
$3.67.
Just for consensus, we're all in agreement that we're in the ballpark.
Yeah.
So I just did some quick math. If we went with the higher number, which is Bill's recommendation, that'd be $3.72 an hour times 40 hours a week times 52 weeks a year. That'd be a raise of $7,337.60. I guess, close to that.
Is there anything we aren't thinking about in terms of this?
So that would be, if you divide that, that'd be like $645 a month. I think that sounds really reasonable and justified.
Yeah, I think we're there. I just want to make sure, because this is municipal finance, and
Yeah.
there's only one person participating in this that is an expert on that, and it's Carol White. So, Carol, is there anything else that we need to consider?
Carol grimaced sort of when you said that.
Did.
I'll again try to take a little heat off of Carol. There will be some additional costs associated with that for payroll taxes, percentages paid into retirement and such like that. So there will be some additional dollars associated with it. So that's clear.
And I think I need to make a minor correction on something Susanna said. The 372 equates to $7,737.60 annually.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure we're clear on the record.
Wait, 372 account
Times 2,080 hours in an annual.
And that would be how much of a raise?
7,737. And I thought you said 7,337.
Oh, I may have.
So I just wanted to be sure that we had the right number on record.
Okay.
I think they forced CMFOs to have extremely accurate calculators.
I actually have two sitting here.
One to check the other.
Dan,
Would
did
you
you,
be willing to make a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, Cheryl, go ahead.
you were halfway through a motion. Did you finish your motion?
No, I pulled that back because I was thinking about benefits and those kinds of things, and just wanted to make sure that we were aware of the full financial impact we're talking about. And just not to go too sideways on this for a moment, but on retirement, the Boyd participates, and you're probably going to be the one to have to answer this, Boyd. We participate in a statewide retirement account. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So, okay, that's all I need to know. It's a statewide system that we pay into.
Correct. Employees and the town pay into that system. We have two separate plans, one for public safety and then one for general employees.
Okay. Does the amount that is paid into by the municipality change based on the amount of distribution that the statewide plan is making?
I'm sorry, say that again, Mayor.
Does the amount that the town pays in contributes to the statewide plan change based on the pay amount?
No.
Okay. So my point being that, well, obviously we wouldn't want to be frivolous. We're not endangering the town in that manner. Not danger is not even an accurate word, but we're not obligating the town in perpetuity
Correct.
with this raise. Just wanted to be sure. I mean, that's what we pay into the system for.
Any adjustments to the retirement rate are based on, it's my understanding, the performance of the retirement fund as a whole.
Okay.
And Tennessee's is among, if not the strongest in the nation, and has been for a very long time. So it's a matter of how that fund performs, how many members you have, what they're paying in, and the projections for, it's an actuarial process that's way above our heads. But it's based on an individual's salary at a given time. Well, once that person retires and is replaced theoretically with someone at a lower rate, then you're going to be paying in less. So it just depends on the positions and the salary they're being paid as to what the ongoing cost of the town is from a payroll perspective.
All right. Bill Lusk, would you be willing to make your suggestion in the form of a motion?
Yeah, I'd move that we increase Boyd's salary by 7.5% on top of the projected cost of living increase.
Second.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Me, Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Discussion.
Thanks for the good work, Boyd.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. I will say before you vote, just so I make sure I get a chance, it has been an interesting process, having not done this at all, and then having it in a video format, and having not seen the evaluations. It was an interesting scenario, but it was a bit humbling and very, very much appreciated. And I do appreciate you guys taking the time to do it.
Thank you. We don't say thank you often enough. Typically when we're calling Boyd, I can hear an uh-oh coming up, because we're dealing with an issue that's our own issue or a citizen's issue. And that's why he gets paid. And that's why he deserves a raise also, because he does a fine job of it. And all right. Absent any further discussion, I don't want to stop anyone. Carol, there's an opportunity for you to chime in if you think we're missing something that we should be considering. I know that's maybe put you in a bad spot, but
No, sir,
we're clear?
I'm clear.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go to vote. So Carol, will you do a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes?
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. Moving on to the next agenda item, discussion. This is the MAC proposal discussion. Boyd, I really feel that you should take the lead on this one.
Okay. Fine. You all have a proposal and had the opportunity to review it. I would like to go back and kind of touch on the budget as presented. And if you will recall, at the very onset of the discussion of the MAC budget, I pointed out that with the uncertainty of the environment we're operating in, I frankly had no idea what to project and what the norm was going to look like. And Mr. Strickland is right in both those regards, and that's why I pointed it out, that what's in the book is a business as usual scenario for the MAC. One of the things that I think I pointed out was that in the salary line item, there is an increase because if we hire a director, we don't know if that director will have a family and require family coverage and insurance, so we have to budget at the maximum amount, and that's something that made a significant difference, like $17,000. So that's the scenario for the remainder of this year is the same. At the time we were putting this together weeks ago, there was even less clarity than there is now. So how you project and in an environment like that is frankly kind of beyond me, and that's why I wanted to be very straightforward with council on the front end and just tell you that. I'm not sure what to plan for.
May I add one thing to that? Because it's appropriate for where you are now. As far as one of the questions that Don had was also about the SMEPF not projecting how much money they could raise. There are no nonprofits able to project how much money they can raise right now. We're in extremely uncertain times, and everyone's feeling this out at this point. And yeah, anyway, so continue. I just thought that was the same thing that you're talking about when you're dealing with a place that's subject to everything that's going on. I'm in the process of working my way through. Is that backwards to you guys?
No.
There's all kinds of stuff being written for places that operate on events, to Boyd's point, trying to figure out how to open back up and how you do it and remain sustainable. So sorry, go ahead, Boyd.
Okay. So the proposal, and so that it's clear, there was an original proposal that basically involved an allocation of full funding, full budget in a scenario much like this, and we had some discussions, and frankly, I thought that needed to be worked a bit, because there needs to be some benefit, some safety to the town in terms of what an investment looks like, what we will be investing in, how the system would work, and so forth. So they came back with a formal proposal, and that's what you have. And basically it amounts to the town covering utilities and just very basic maintenance and all for the building, because it is our building. It includes us paying electric, water, communication services, gas. The piano tuning was mentioned. That's something that's been in the budget for as long as I've dealt with this. There are several pianos in the building, especially in a building that is humidity challenged. Those need attention on a regular basis. Again, are they going to be used as normal in the upcoming year? And no one knows that, but if lessons are able to begin again, that's something that's going to be necessary, so we left it in there. These expenses would be paid by the town just as they are now. We wouldn't be transferring money to SMEPF that they could use for this or other purposes. We would simply pay these bills as we continue to do. We would also continue to provide the cleaning service at the level we do now. And Jared and his folks would continue to take care of the grounds at the level they do now. On top of that, then the request would be that the town would dedicate $56,000 towards expanding the HVAC in the building and improving the environment within the building and the value of the facility at the same time. And again, the proposed and predicted, again, those fall into the same issue, with the same type of issue that we have in the budget itself. It's very difficult to project what's going to happen. The business as usual budget for MAC is $183,000. They project a revenue of $25,000. I think 35 is what's in the budget because again, that is the norm. But 25 is probably closer to realistic if revenue is able to be generated in the coming year. So, you know, the bottom line would be that compared to a normal year, this would be significantly less expense to the town, and pretty much all of the expense would be dedicated to the building, either maintaining utilities and alarm system and property insurance or investing into the building itself with HVAC. Then as things progressed, if the MAC was able to start functioning for lessons or small events or whatever, then SMEPF would handle that. Any operations that are able to take place, they would manage for a year and would receive any revenue that's generated. And by their bylaws, that revenue then would turn around and go into the building as well.
May I ask, has the town written any checks to SMEPF?
Not to my knowledge. I was trying to think if there was any type of a reimbursement scenario or anything like that, but I don't think there's even been that.
Do you foresee the town writing any checks to SMEPF?
No.
Has SMEPF written checks to the town?
I believe so.
Yeah, like even all the way back to the sprinkler system.
Correct.
SMEPF even contributed to that.
Right.
Okay.
And that's the way it would be set up, the way that the agreement would be written, so that if there is for lack of a better term, commingling of funds on a particular project or purchase or anything, it would have to come from them to us. We would make the purchase, not the other way around. And
the $56,000 was one of the was pointed out several times, that is not a $56,000 project. That's saying that money would be applied to systematically figuring out what's the best way to put air conditioning in all the individual rooms, is my understanding. Or, I mean, you guys might identify, SMEPF doesn't just get to go, hey, we have $56,000 to spend on something.
No, the town would be spending those funds. We would do it in consultation with SMEPF. They've been doing the work in the rooms now. Obviously, we want a consistent system, but those funds would be managed by the town, and it's not a matter of saying $56,000 is going to accomplish HVAC through the remainder of the building. It's simply a matter of saying we think that's a number we could commit, and then the task would be to accomplish as much as possible with those funds to climate control as much of the building as possible.
With the goal that's been discussed to try to eliminate the boiler if possible in the future, which is very expensive, problematic, adds to the humidity issues, and quite honestly doesn't work.
Right.
It's a very old.
And that's another example of some of the things that you just don't know. And I always try to be upfront about things I don't know. There are a lot of them. It just doesn't make sense to me to guesstimate when you're going to be held accountable for that. And you know, the utilities. If we get rid of the boiler system that leaks, water bill's going to change. We get away from the gas-fired boiler, the gas bill's going to change. But if we're putting even high efficiency HVAC systems in their electrical is going to go up. What is all that going to look like as we go through this process? There's no way of knowing. So this budget reflects the norm for those utilities. And as the process evolves, I think the allocation of those funds evolves as well, but certainly no indication that it would be more expensive.
So the asset improvement, the asset value improvement, which is already taking place, and I may want to show a picture or two in a moment, but the asset improvement that's taking place already, putting that aside, the overall impact of this proposal to the town's overall budget is a positive or a negative?
It is a positive felt impact. It improves the budget position. Again, I think it does, period, but it certainly does based on the normal operating budget. How that relates to what next year's budget would actually shape up to be, I don't know. But again, the funds that the town is dedicating are going to specifically either maintain or improve the facility, as opposed to a lot of the other things that would be required of a normal operational year.
Does this change the town council's role in terms of spending limits and when council has to speak?
No, not if the town is making purchases. The purchasing guideline would still be in place.
So I'm bringing that up. So if a purchase that someone thought was questionable came up of considerable expense, it would still go before the council and there would still be public opportunity to address it.
Yes, if we're doing anything that's over $10,000, that will come to council. SMEPF can make purchases independent of the town and independent of town funds of that magnitude, but not with town funds, and they would not have the spending power associated with government funds anyway. We would be doing that, so nothing changed in that regard.
I want to be clear, SMEPF would not have the right to modify a town. They couldn't tear off a wing, even if they paid for it themselves.
No,
Why?
because our agreement provides them the ability to do certain things, and anything beyond that has to be approved by the town, either by me or by council, depending on the magnitude. And tearing off a wing would certainly be town council magnitude.
Right. Just want to make it clear.
Right.
There's, people.
Dan, do you have the sheet handy that shows expenditures so far, room by room?
Do I have it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Do you want me to show that?
Yeah.
Or Sam may want to do. Well, he may not be there.
Yes, I do believe I have that. Just one second. Is this what
There
you're
you
talking about? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely.
Do you want to address something on that, Cheryl?
Well, it's just, it amazes me when I see it in black and white, how many man hours have gone into the MAC so far, and how much money that has been raised, that has been spent. And it is going room by room by room. Of course, the bulk in the theater at this point. I think it just shows the track record of SMEPF that they set up to do just exactly what they're doing, and that's restore the town building, an asset to the town.
Very good. And now would be a good time, Sam, if you can pull that down, unless someone has a question. Anybody have a question about that or want to speak to anything specifically? Feel free to screen up, Sam. I'm not going to take time. We've seen a lot of images, for a while, and even had a play in the theater, which is in fantastic shape. But I do want to speak to some of the things that have been happening. Is everybody seeing what I'm showing?
Yes.
So what I want you to see are just some recent things that the public has not been able to see. This is looking down the left hallway. You'll notice the stained. I have many adjectives I could use, and I'm not going to use most of them, but the ceiling was in tough shape, and the stuff that was on top of the ceiling was disgusting. That's gone. There's sheetrock. There are new schoolhouse lights applied there. That very first image I was showing you, take a look at those doors, and I'll be quick with this. I'm not going to ramble on. That's what it looks like when a volunteer is scraping a door. And we have people like Art Haygood, who have volunteered countless hours, spending their days standing there meticulously scraping down doors, so that as progress takes place, they end up looking like this. That's all volunteer hours. It would be I think the value of what's being done is probably being underestimated, not overestimated on the terms of man hours. So that's that hallway on the left-hand side as you come in the entrance. This is the right-hand hallway as you come in and look down that. That also had a long, awful drop ceiling stain, nasty stuff above it. Now there's schoolhouse lights down both hallways. Since that picture was taken, I don't guess I have a good shot, but the crown molding is being revealed that was back in the building and being refinished. I've seen Cheryl Graham up there scraping that piece of crown molding herself. I think that's your work, Cheryl.
That's my work, sad as it is, yeah.
Below that, in the other hallways, a few inches, they've installed a picture rail so the walls don't get damaged as much again. so that artwork that needs to be hung for plays and other events gets hung like it used to in the old days off of a rail. This is a green room dressing area. We might have seen pictures of that before. That none of this was here. The place has that now. This is one of the front offices. The drop ceiling's gone, schoolhouse lights installed. The walls are being cleaned up. The windows are being scraped. This is the main office that people come in most of the time. Notice the window at the back of the room has been revealed. Obviously there's still some work being done in there, but the windows are being scraped. Ceiling's been redone. Schoolhouse lights and good lighting have been installed. The town installed the lighting. That was part of something that was budgeted a while. Excuse me. Town installed the carpet, part of something installed a while back. I have many more, and I'm not gonna do that. But I just wanted people to see one last one. It's just I don't know if I showed a good picture of the lobby. I didn't bring that one in, but the lobby is also all sheetrock, schoolhouse lights. There's just, indulge me one more. No, I won't do it because it's taking up too much time. We need to discuss some other things. What I would like to ask is any citizen who wants to see where money they're not paying because it's being done by donation is going, but what is happening to a town-owned asset, contact SMEPF. If you contact the town, they'll forward you, and we can wear masks and someone can give you a tour through the facility and you can see what's happening, and you probably will be asked to help because that's what's needed. There's plenty of room there for people to come and volunteer. There's tons of room for social distancing. Families can come in and take on a project if you're looking for a reason to get out and get involved in something in your community. This doesn't have to be lemons during this weird time. This could be lemonade, and here's an opportunity for us to use it. So anyway, Boyd, I derailed your presentation.
Well, I want to derail it just another minute or so to say that along with the cosmetic restoration that we're doing, it's behind the walls too, because every room that we go in and renovate, we also have completely new wiring run to that room. And there's still a lot of knob and tube wiring, especially in the old part of the building. And we are eliminating that one room at a time to make the room more safe, make the whole building more safe.
And when you say we, you mean you're hiring an electrician who's coming in
We
and
are
doing it.
hiring an electrician. I don't know what we would do without him, but yes, we have a licensed electrician come in and handle all the electrical work.
As an example, do we know about how much money has been spent on electrical work in that building? This is not by the town.
Off the top of my head, I do not know. It's a lot. I'll give you that.
It exceeds $20,000, I'm sure.
Yeah, easily. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find those numbers. Boyd, would you like to continue on budget impact?
I think we've pretty much been through it. And again, what I would like to stress is that I don't know exactly how we determine exactly what that will be. It will definitely improve the budget as presented, because again, it is a business as usual budget. So making these changes just from what it is now to what is proposed should be around 40,000 plus positive impact on the budget. And again, what funds we are budgeting are going into either maintenance or improvements for the building. And one thing I guess we haven't really touched on in the proposal, again, to the degree MAC is able to operate, SMEPF proposes that they do that via volunteers, and they would the organization would be responsible for that. Funds generated would stay with them, but all funds they generate are dedicated to the building. But beyond that, we are talking about a 1-year scenario. Unless, given the current situation, we actually get it underway ahead of the new budget, just for the sake of getting some things moving. But we're talking about a 1-year scenario, not a long-term commitment. And it came up in the MAC board meeting yesterday, which I'll touch more on in a second, but that, you know, we're going in this saying up front that there are a lot of uncertainties, so it's hard to really pinpoint what the differences are going to be in terms of budget to budget and everything. So if we do that, we also have to admit that things may happen that change our position and what we might want to do. So any agreement as the ones we have with them now for other things would certainly include the ability to go back and reconsider the provisions of an agreement if circumstances should change significantly. But I'm sorry, beyond that, I just want to point out that it is just that 1-year period, and that at about this time next year, the idea would be to have a very similar discussion to look at what has been accomplished in the last year, how it's worked, where we are we in a position then to recruit and hire a director and go back to operating as before? Or do we like what we're seeing and how things are going, and does council want to continue with that? So it's beyond that. There's no commitment long-term on the side of the town.
Every decision has positive and negative consequences. And can you talk for a moment about the part-time employees? Because I think this has been one of the negative consequences of, obviously, of the COVID disaster that everybody's dealing with. But, you know, the timing with this proposal coming in, I know does not feel good to those who've lost their jobs.
Okay. And that's the most difficult part of this whole thing in the last few months. I mean, it's become it's interesting how many interesting things we've gotten to deal with over the last few years, and as difficult as some of this has been in terms of figuring out how we're going to operate, how we're going to deliver services to the best of our ability within certain guidelines, and those guidelines are consistently changing, and although those are challenges, those are just things you do. That's what we're here to do. The decisions that come down to employees and their lives are far beyond that, and it's been the most difficult part of this. But we are where we are, and have given notice to the part-time staff that they are laid off. Though it doesn't sound like it, hopefully that ultimately is a positive scenario, because they can now apply for benefits. But I think it's most important to point out that is exactly where we would be had this proposal never come to my inbox. This hasn't caused that. We would still be here. Now, what ultimately it might do is determine if that is a shorter or longer term scenario. And with the proposal of SMEPF to operate it for a year, that obviously would indicate that those jobs would not be available during that period of time. and I don't know that that's different. I don't know when we would be in a position to bring employees back, or if we're going to be in the coming year. Again, it's just one of those things that we don't know. And as discussed with the MAC board yesterday, my only position on this, and I've tried to just explain it and make sure the details are as clear as possible, not from a pro or con perspective, but what I see is a definite advantage to this scenario is that absent this, we don't have a plan. We don't know what the future holds, and we don't know what the next year looks like for the MAC. With this proposal, we have a plan and we know what the next year looks like. So I can't tell you if this changes things for the employees or not. I don't know. I can tell you that this is not the reason they're in the status that they're in now.
All right, thank you. So just circling back quickly, the numbers on the electrical that the SMEPF has spent on the building is $32,620 so far. So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, to Cheryl's point earlier, going on. All right, folks, there's about 1,000 other minor things we could discuss with this, but
Mayor,
yes, sir.
if I may, I apologize. I got sidetracked and didn't complete the thought on the MAC board. They did meet yesterday and had considerable discussion on this, and there was a vote. There was a motion and second to support the proposal of SMEPF, and that passed with a vote of 5-4, 5 in favor, 1 abstained or undecided, and 1 no. So the MAC board has voted to support this proposal.
The function of the MAC board is an advisory board to the council and formed by the council. Just so the people understand where those kinds of things fit in. The MAC board does not approve the budget. And I just want to, that was maybe implied earlier that the MAC board approved the budget, and it doesn't really. It's an advisory board to the council. So all the budget stuff has to be approved here. Anything else that we need to touch on from that standpoint? So with the same concerns that we had when we were discussing town manager raise, this impacts the budget. So I feel like we do need to vote today on this. Is that the way you see it, Boyd?
I think that would be the best scenario, so that to the extent possible, when we vote on the budget, it is as complete as possible. Again, admittedly, there are some aspects of it that just can't be at this point, but this does clear one of those up.
I think this should not be seen as a given. And I'm probably going to regret asking this question. If we voted right now and we said no, what does the budget look like for the MAC, and what happens?
Again, that's a good question. I think probably at this point we could go back in and make some adjustments and projection changes. I don't know exactly what those would look like. And again, to be clear, when this budget was put together, this was several weeks ago, and things were even less clear then. But could that be cleared up some in terms of budget numbers? That's possible, but I have no idea what that ultimately would look like.
Okay, so we can entertain a motion if anybody would like to do so. Oh, and I think now's where I need to make clear that it's already been stated earlier, but I want to go on the record that Angie, my wife, is the president of the SMEPF. And that doesn't mean I can't vote, but it means I need to disclose that. And this is just purely a personal note. What that means in terms of our lives is that we volunteer a lot more hours to an ongoing project and spend money on things that benefit the town. We do not benefit from this in any way. And I, as a musician, prior to getting on the council, and when I decided to run for the council, I haven't taught a single lesson, haven't done anything, which is actually probably not good for the MAC, but I just wanted to not have there be any conflict of interest. So I haven't even taught my own lessons there, which would probably benefit the MAC if I did. But Cheryl is, well, Cheryl, you do your own disclosures.
Good grief, where do I begin? I am not a member of the SMEPF board. However, my husband is. We drafted him. While I'm not a member of the board, I am a full-time volunteer at the MAC, scraping, painting, digging, cleaning, doing whatever else that needs to be done. No one on the SMEPF board realizes any monetary gain from this job or for any of our volunteer hours. They are strictly volunteer. Mainly what I have done for the SMEPF, not for them, for the building, is just a heck of a lot of time and money spent on helping. There will be no paid salaries to anyone if this proposal goes through.
The Grahams have been as close to an angel donor as we could have. And I don't want to say it's just for that building, it's for the town. And this brings me back to another one of those points where we're a small town. And to say that someone who had, if the Grahams have an interest in this place because their kids went to school there, that doesn't disqualify them from being on the council and wanting to make it better any more than someone who loves baseball and was a professional baseball player gets on the council and wants to be involved in being involved in sports. Or, I mean, we could hit this from as many angles as possible. We're a small town and doers are going to be doing, and they're probably also going to be on boards, which we need more of them, and they're going to be contributing. So I think that's all good. And Susanna, you've been the liaison to the MAC board. Do you have any thoughts on just the relations of this and what you've learned?
Well, I think it's been really encouraging to me to see how collaboratively the MAC advisory board and the SMEPF board have kind of consulted with one another and worked together in tandem to make progress on the up at the MAC and at the building. And I feel like we're in this with the amount of investment that has taken place both financially and with volunteer hours. This facility is being kind of, and program within it is being sort of thrust into the next century, you know, and it's a new way of looking at doing things. We have kind of a unique opportunity here to complete a lot of the work that's been done. And so that's sort of the lemonade scenario out of this crazy pandemic situation that everybody's been thrust into. And I think it's a good use of taxpayer dollars to get this HVAC project complete. That building could really, it's already a wonderful asset to the town, but to be able to sort of enhance the uses and the types of lessons and the types of activities that could take place there could end up, you know, really being a great way to generate revenue for the town. And if we can have more efficient systems in place that are gonna make it less expensive to run, I think that's a worthy investment. I mean, this is a town asset. So I feel very supportive of this proposal, and I'm appreciative of the fact that these two advisory boards have kind of come together and they both support it. I think we need to listen to them. They're the true stakeholders in this. They're the ones that are really paying attention to day-to-day operations. And if they give us a vote of confidence in this proposal, then it's our duty to not only ask questions, but to, thoughtfully listen and consider this proposal. So I give it a thumbs up.
All right, Bill, do you have anything? I guess we need a motion if we're going to move forward, and I don't think it's appropriate for me to make it.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, I'm not clear on the motion.
That we move forward with the SMEPF proposal.
Thank you.
Suzanne, does that fit with what you seconded?
Yes.
Discussion? Hearing none. Carol, will you take a roll call vote?
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. Moving on to the next item of discussion.
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
if I might, just for clarity, what we'll do is try to compile an agreement. Harry, Sam, and I will work on that, and if possible, have that for the next meeting, not the following, but we will adjust the budget according to the proposal, and then we will also have a resolution at the appropriate time to approve the formal agreement with SMEPF.
Would it be possible if we ran into sticking points in that contract agreement, because both sides are going to have to agree before that contract gets signed, would it be possible for us to finalize the budget without that?
Yes.
Because we'd just be setting aside the money, basically.
Correct. I think it would be a better scenario to do that than to approve the agreement absent the budget. I thought it was important to get to that point, but the other way around won't be an issue.
In terms of the hive mind wisdom that comes from citizens that see things that we aren't seeing, there are two opportunities coming up at the next two council meetings to address council. And one of those, we have a public hearing, the second meeting generally will be for this ordinance.
Correct. For the budget ordinance, there will be an actual public hearing on the budget itself, separate and apart from the citizens' opportunity to address council.
Right. So there's plenty of time to talk about this still, if we're missing something. So, all right. Carol, you comfortable taking roll? Oh, we did. That's right. Never mind.
We take a short break.
What's that?
Could we take a short break?
I
10
think
minutes?
that's a brilliant idea. And I apologize, folks, but these are odd times and it's a budget. So we got to work through some things. And in the interest of full disclosure, I wanted that one to be as open, and it was, I hope. So Sam, if you could put up some kind of a notice, it is 10:45. Could we reconvene at 10:55?
Yep.
Is that good for everyone?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
All right, mute your microphone and your video. All right, welcome back, everyone. We are going to talk about the use of recreational facilities, and it's going to seem like deja vu all over again because I want to talk about the MAC as a recreational facility. And this is going to be new information to some of you. Let me just do this as a narrative, and then I'll read the specifics. Everyone is going through this, and that document that I held up earlier about the guide to reopening these kinds of facilities, it's the Event Safety Alliance reopening guide during COVID-19. Just want to read one short paragraph in that, and that'll lead into what I'm going into now. The life cycle of any event begins with a decision to do business in the first place. This reopening guide assumes that we all want to reopen as fully and quickly as possible without unreasonably risking the health or safety. A government directive legally allowing us to reopen does not mean we can do so safely. So I think we all know that. In one short paragraph, if small events and venues can reopen without increasing COVID-19 transmission rates, it will open the door for progressively larger spaces to implement similar measures on a larger scale in the future. If, on the other hand, the first attempt at a safe reopening is a failure, it will set back the entire event industry. And that's what everybody's messing with, which is going to bring me to this topic. Everyone is familiar with Chattanooga's Nightfall series. Well, Nightfall cannot reopen in June, at least. They might be able to in July. I was contacted by the principal person who puts it on, Carla Pritchard, who I've known for years. Even back when she was working with the Downtown Partnership. What they're going to do is a live stream, and what they're looking for is a nice space to present a live stream or a pre-recorded live stream of their local act, not their national act, because the national act's not traveling here. They're going to send a video in that gets added in the live stream. And she heard tell of what's happening at the MAC, which is exactly the kind of thing we want to have happen. To create this space that can be used. And so one of the ideas going forward for locals, this is even a possibility for the Mountain Opry, as you've all heard, is considering or may have already decided to close, to perhaps have a place to continue in a live stream fashion. We have a stage, and we've been in the process, this is not the town, this is those on SMEPF, of buying the kinds of material necessary in order to create a live stream that could be fed from our facility. This could be available to teachers. It could be available, to local bands, or of all possibilities that I'm excited about. It could help us to help out with a Chattanooga tradition that's been going on for years. However, we as a council voted to close the building. I don't think we can do this without council's permission moving forward. So the email that I sent to Boyd wrapping this up, and I'm just going to read this because it's the fastest way to summarize what the ask is. The producers of Nightfall need a place to record the opening act for the Nightfall series, which kicks off via live stream on June 5. The space rental fee will go to the MAC, and anybody involved in it will be volunteering their time to make happen. Space rental to pre-record a bluegrass band from Cookeville on June 1st at 2 p.m. So that's the specific ask. The MAC space rental charge would be $150 per hour, which is the standard. It's what it already does. And we would be providing volunteer lights engineering, audio engineering, and a couple of videographers and associative gear. Chattanooga Presents would be providing the band, obviously, and all hospitality services for the band. And there's some other technical stuff. They would provide some pre-produced drops if they get combined with this other. And their estimated minimum total would be $600 to the MAC, which means to the town in this case, and $700 if we provide the live streaming services for them on June 5, which we don't know if we would do that or not, but we probably would. So that's the minimum. It could be more. Go.
I think that sounds like a, I mean, what an opportunity for us to be able to sort of showcase our new theater to the broader Chattanooga community. And it makes us a little bit of money. So I don't see any downsides to it.
Mayor, if you would, I don't think you touched on total number of people that'll be involved. It's pretty small, so.
It's four-piece band. You'd have a producer and a director. So that adds 6. You'd have 2 videographers, minimum one. Let's say you had 4, but probably 2 on stage. That brings it up to 8. I mean, you're looking at 15 people if you have way more than you need in order to make this take place. And they're not in a group. You know, the band is a group of 4 people that are together all the time. Even that, we've looked at what the guidelines are, even if we had an audience, which, you know, it could be possible, but we could discuss that as a separate idea. You could put them the proper distance back. Everyone who's working cameras, who's working lighting material, who's working all of that can all wear masks. So it's a small group. I'm trying to not just ramble.
Thank you.
So you're comfortable that you can ensure best practices?
I'm comfortable that I'm scared to death if we don't ensure best practices, something awful can happen. And
So is that a yes or a no?
well, it's why I read that paragraph before. If you do it wrong, you mess up. I mean, you potentially hurt people and you make it so you can't achieve your goals. So the incentive to do it right is very high and to go above the minimum to protect it. So I'm comfortable that we would make every attempt to do that. I'm also comfortable that we're human. And again, as you examine things, you go, I wish, you know what I'm saying? I mean, everybody's trying to figure this out. This is new territory and we know what the guidelines are and we can meet the guidelines. I'm comfortable we can do that. It's a big room.
But a small stage.
But a small stage. It's not a small stage for 4 people though.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, from a legal perspective, I think it is terribly important. What you all are talking about is important because the town generally has immunity from against claims for personal injury and that kind of thing. But that immunity can be lost under certain circumstances, one of which is if a government employee fails to comply with guidelines or regulations. I talked to our insurance carrier about this kind of issue generally, and our insurance policy even has an exclusion for damage or injury that occurs as a result of the town not following a guideline or regulations. I think the governor's executive orders are guidelines and regulations that need to be complied with.
In terms of protocols for operation and social distancing and all that, but not necessarily in terms of whether or not we open our facilities, correct?
Correct.
We would not be indemnified for our negligent acts or omissions, would we?
We would not.
Okay.
And to be clear, we would, as I mentioned earlier, that's as important to us as anything as well, for much bigger reasons than than legal, because it's because of public health. But on top of that, that same thing exists right now. Before COVID, that same issue existed if we had a big open hole in the stage and we put a carpet over it.
Sure.
So this isn't something that we're not dealing with every day. We deal with the public on a town-owned facility.
That's correct.
You need to clarify there's no big open hole on the stage that we've thrown a carpet over. So
There is not.
there's not.
It's not that kind of show.
No.
And I guess I didn't really speak to, and this is me selling just a little bit. I think, of course, they have to agree, and they're taking a risk on trying this as well with us. I mean, they have to agree to it, but I think there's really good promotional value for what we're trying to do with our space with this and tying in with something that everyone has heard of. So the incentive to do a fantastic job is there. Yeah, to go above and beyond, make this look good.
So you mentioned that the first concert would be on the 1st of June.
No.
Oh.
The taping would be
Recording.
on the 1st of June, yes.
Yeah.
The recording of, and is this something that would last for a month or like once a week for a certain period of time? Because Nightfall usually falls on Friday nights. So is this for the entire Nightfall season, or what's the projected timeline?
This is the hope would be that's what they want to do. And that, they want to see our work
Yeah.
as well. So, and just find out how the whole thing works for them. This is, we're all in this together. This is new for them as well. They're trying to figure it out. They'd like to be live, but they don't want to hurt anybody. So I can't answer that. This ask today is only for this one event.
So it's kind of like a pilot event.
But, you got a good point though. Do we want to, if, and it's completely okay. I mean, the council may decide, nope, it's too risky for us. And that's just the way it is, if that's the case. But we might also want to consider, can we do a second one without having another council meeting? We want to have a council meeting for every decision that's made. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this before the pool is just to say, look, we need to treat all of these things the same, with the same amount of caution. No pet projects here. Harry, go ahead, Boyd.
I just wanted to mention that, the mayor initially asked me about this scenario, and normally it's something that I would or would not approve, but we're in this situation because ultimately the council did decide that we would close MAC to all activity and not staff it, which we still won't. There will be volunteers there, but with Dan being there, there's also a direct town representative that will be there as well. But it's just a little different situation because of where we are, why, as to why it's coming to council as opposed to something that I would normally deal with.
Are you comfortable speaking to what you would have said had that not been the situation?
You had a couple of options. One being that there might be a small audience to add some quality to the recording or something to that effect. And I don't know that I would have had a comfort level with that, but with no town staff there, with strict protocols and just the people necessary to do the production, I would likely have approved that.
It's possible. I've done a lot of reading about the pools opening, and some of the safeguards that they're putting in place is to screen temperatures of people who come in to pools, and to have people required to wear masks. So we could put in place some precautions that would fall into that category to make sure that nobody's sick, at least that they know of, and, you know, comes into the building.
I think in this instance, it would be pretty straightforward to make an addendum to our standard rental agreement that lays out what would be required in that regard. Much like the mayor said, that, you know, people other than performers need to wear masks, and when coming on site into the facility, need to be screened at some level, at least questioned and make affirmation that they're not having symptoms or anything like that. But that would be a pretty straightforward addendum that we could apply with our attached to our standard rental agreement.
And I think, you know, having hand sanitizer and Clorox wipes, or, you know, paper towels and stuff to clean with readily available for everybody that's in there that's kind of putting on the production would be a good protocol as well.
Anyone care to, I don't know, this requires a vote. I guess it's direction. It's an odd thing for the council to need to weigh in on something like this, but these are odd times. So Harry, do you think we need to vote, or how should we proceed?
Yeah, I think the council needs to vote, since Boyd thinks it should be council decision.
Okay. All right. And I
Which
want
I
to
agree
clarify. Go ahead.
Which I agree with.
Okay. So yay or nay, it's not a done deal as well, because time is of the essence, obviously, because we're talking about next Monday. And so we've got to make a decision. And, you know, it's the only honest thing to do would be to say no, rather than say we can't tell you for 3 or 4 more days, because they have to make plans. And I will tell you, if we choose to not do this here, I will just help out the Nightfall folks by helping them find another place off the mountain to do the same thing, because they've got to do it, you know, as part of the series. So again, since I brought this up, I'm a bit uncomfortable making a motion.
I'd like to move that we allow this event to occur at the MAC on Monday the 1st.
Second, third.
Did you get that, Carol? And thank you for that, Bill, because I mean, I know it's a risk, and everything we do, we're going to second guess ourselves, and everything we've done is going to be second guessed as we move forward. So I promise you, if this passes, we will take every precaution to protect ourselves and protect our, you know. So Carol, if there's no further discussion, if anybody wants to speak to.
Will you just make sure, I think we should add in the rental agreement or whatever about wearing masks and filling out a form, or just some kind of precaution?
Yeah, I think just the town, Boyd's going to have to give us a contract.
Yeah.
Do we need to modify the amendment for that, or is that just understood? The motion, or is that understood? Because that's standard procedure anyway.
Yeah.
Harry, you okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
That seemed mild.
Well, you're putting some onus on Boyd he thinks he understands what everybody wants the protocol to be. But you know, probably the better practice is to amend your motion to specify we move to approve this arrangement subject to, you know, the lease agreement providing for taking temperatures or masks or whatever specifically you think ought to be in there.
All right, Bill, are you willing to withdraw your motion?
Yes, I'll withdraw the motion.
Susanna, withdraw your second.
I withdraw.
And would you like to make a new motion, Bill?
I moved that we do what Harry said.
It's always a good idea.
It looked like Carol was, furiously writing there.
She might have just been
And-
curious.
And where I'm at is approve this agreement, subject to amending the rental agreement to include. Were there
What Harry said.
specific? What did you say, Harry?
Temperature taking at admission when people come in, if y'all want that, and required face masks. Anything else?
For everyone except the performers.
Good point.
We haven't
And
seen them. That maybe.
We could take their temperature.
Right.
Do we have the stuff for that?
we don't, we have some ordered and they have been for some time, but I don't have a guess when they might actually get here. Could,
Do our paramedics?
no, I don't think so. Like I said, we've had some order for weeks. We can see if we can get that, and they may have access to it. But I wonder, and if you want taking temperature specifically in there, we can do that. But I think beyond that, there needs to be a statement that there will be general COVID-19 pre-screening, so that you're asking people, have you had a fever? Do you have these symptoms? Because they could have some symptoms and not have a fever. So I just wanted to point that out. If you want to leave temperature in there specifically, we can. But I think we need to say something other than just
Yeah.
take temperature.
Yeah. Thinking about restaurant guidelines, I don't believe they're taking temperatures of restaurant patrons, but they're asking them questions, or at least that's in the guidelines. And seems like if we're following the governor's guidelines, we're meeting, what Harry said.
Okay.
That sound accurate, Harry?
Yes. Yep.
Can we modify that? Oh, I don't know that I can say it. Can I talk about how to modify Bill's motion, Harry, or not?
Well, I'm not sure there's really a motion.
Can I read what I have so
Yeah.
far?
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with the original motion. And so what I've got so far is to allow the event to occur on Monday, June the 1st, and to approve this agreement subject to amending the rental agreement to include requiring face masks for everyone except the performers and general COVID pre-screening.
Entering the building.
Entering the building.
Got it.
And I don't, it's not my job to suggest whether you should or shouldn't have something in the motion, but if the taking the temperature is going to be problematic, I think you are safe with just requiring masks for non-performers and compliance with COVID guidelines and regulations from the governor.
I'm
If you
comfortable.
want to require temperatures, that's fine.
Bill, does that meet a motion that you would like to make?
Yes.
Just 1 second, please. I'm writing this last part that our attorney suggested. So complies with the COVID guidelines and regulations as issued by the state. Is that what you said?
As issued by Governor Lee's executive orders.
Got it. All right, and I have Councilmember Lusk making a motion.
Murdoch, second.
Any discussion? Carol, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Cheryl Graham,
Yes.
Councilmember Bill Lusk,
Yes.
Councilmember Susanna Murdoch,
Yes.
Mayor Dan Landrum.
Yes. All right, we're still on recreational facilities discussion to the pool. Is Jared available, or Boyd, did Jared provide you with some possible scenarios?
Jared is
Yeah.
available if you'd like to bring him in.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, Sam, if you can, see if you can get him in, but,
Absolutely.
we kind of looked at this. Jared looked at it, and then I asked Carol to run numbers as well, and they're very close because for part-time staff, there's very little difference in terms of additional wages beyond their hourly. So what you asked us to look at was what it would look like if we open the pool for lap swimming only. So what we did was look at a couple different scenarios. If we would open for 4-hour blocks. So you could have a block from 8 to 12 with a set of guards. If those guards were going to work more than that, then I think you would have to add some. So with a 4-hour block, you could do it with 3 guards. If they're going to work 6 hours, then you'd have to add another guard so you could work in breaks and stuff like that. But basically, if you had a 4-hour block with 3 guards, that would cost about $121. And in that period of time, the suggestion would be, if we were to do something like this, it'd be a 45-minute usage block that would start on the hour, and then that would give a 15-minute swap out period. So given that scenario, in a 4-hour block with the 8 lanes, you could have 32 swimmers utilize the facility. The question would be, one of the questions would be, when it would make sense to do that. Is this something that you did all day? Or if you had a block from maybe 8 to 12 in the morning, and then a block from 4 to 8 in the evening, for folks that work could have the opportunity to use it. But really, it seemed to make more sense to just look at that block scenario. If you just needed 3 guards, a 4-hour block, you could do that for $121 per block of time, and up to 32 people could use it. That's it. If we were going to do that, I would certainly recommend setting a minimum age of 18, maybe even 21.
What about fee structure?
That's one of the questions. Obviously it wouldn't take a lot to cover that cost, but along with what the fee would be, to me, the more difficult question to answer is how you manage it, how you schedule it.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, in terms of general discussion, the 18 or 21 thing, I absolutely understand why you said that, because we're not trying to create a party place. We've all seen images, by the way, of the Ozarks. I don't know if you heard the news from overnight. Everyone who was at that place is under a 14-day quarantine now, because it was a big party and a bunch of people all together, and that's what happens. And we're obviously trying to avoid that. Swimming lanes is avoiding that in a way. Our town facility that we're already going to be paying between nearing $20,000 just to keep open is a place that, in my opinion, can be used in a responsible but limited manner. Taking that facility away from people who are not getting to participate in summer swim events, swim meets, bothers me. I think to have those lanes available for kids who would be doing swim team, who are perhaps readying themselves for college, training for next year and those kinds of things, feels like that's a town service that we can provide. And it's going to be complicated. It's going to be harder work for everyone. And I'm just trying to get all my thoughts out here in one big belch here. But the fact that we don't have regular leagues going on makes me want to ask, is there not a way we can take some of the burden off of the teens who are going to be our lifeguards to have an adult in the room somehow, so that they are not responsible for enforcing guidelines, that an adult is there, or an adult is at least on standby, because we're right next to town hall. And, you know, and I don't want to put this on you, boy, but you might be the best qualified person to go over there. Or those are the things that need to happen. None of them are status quo. They all create problems, and we've got to make a decision. Anybody else want to chime in? And I'll toss this out there again. Any council member at any moment can make a motion to close the pool for the year. That's always possible. Just
Well, let's hear from Jared, get his take on this.
I think talking to Boyd yesterday, I think we can do it. You know, if it just to start off with a 4-hour block with 3 guards. To Boyd's point, I think the issue is going to be how are we going to schedule it? Are we going to have people call down at the pool office and set it up that way? Are they going to call up here in my office? I guess that's my biggest concern. And Dan, to your point too, I definitely don't want to put the onus of the rules and regulations to be put on a 16, 17-year-old kid. So I would definitely be around, or have one of my full-time guys that would be available.
what about swim team members?
In terms of coming in and swimming?
And practicing lane swimming. That's what swimming. Yeah.
Again, I think you could. I don't, I just don't, you don't want to get into a 14, 15-year-old kid, that we let to come in and swim, and then he invites 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of his friends, and they block off an hour, and then, and then you get into a situation where maybe their buddies catch wind of it and they want to come up. And so, you could, it's just, you just definitely have to regulate it.
People
Jared, do you mind?
thrown out of the swimming pool for other reasons.
Say again?
People have been thrown out of the swimming pool for other reasons in the past.
Jared, do you mind if I put you on the spot?
Sure.
Does this make any sense to you at all?
Yes and no. I do understand the need for individuals that want to come up and lap swim. I do see several scenarios that are going to make it difficult in terms of just constantly having to, shoo off younger ones. What if a mom or dad want to come in and say, well, I've got my 2 little kids with me and they've got their floaties on. Do you mind if they hang out in the baby pool, or do you mind if they float over here while I get my lap swim in? And we're going to have those situations. So again, I can see it. I can see it both ways.
How would, I don't want to dominate the conversation. Bill, what are your concerns?
What they always have been. You referenced the scenario on Memorial Day at Lake of the Ozark. Bo sent us a link to a webcam on the beach, and it just seems that folks aren't really taking this seriously. Some may be, some, but obviously a lot of folks are not taking it seriously. And from my perspective, that we left it closed for another couple of weeks, just keep revisiting every couple of weeks to see if it makes any sense. But right now, all the numbers are going up. Some would argue that, well, it's just because we're doing more testing. Well, sure, that's true. But the numbers are still going up and they're not coming down. So I just don't think it makes any sense to me. And I'll just restate what I said in our last meeting, is that we have a lake with miles of shoreline, plenty of places to swim if you want to swim, that are not confined like our pool.
I get that. We are in control of a taxpayer asset now that, and really this is the core of why I want us to wrestle with this and even argue with each other if we have to before we make the decision, is that we have this thing that can be used in a safe manner for its intended purpose. If it's misused, it gets closed. And it's, in a sense, it's like Rainbow Lake parking this weekend. That wasn't perfect, but it worked pretty well. Word got out. I went by a couple of times. I know the police were down there. I saw a ticket on a truck's window parked on the side of the road. And so I know they're doing that. As always, people will tend to find the kinks, you know, in your armor and try to find a way to get around rules. But we're all adults. And if Jared is there, I just think if you have very strict rules that this is for lane swimming, then that situation, Jared, just, you have to say no. If a 14-year-old who's on the swim team wants to swim and asks to bring 4 other kids, well, we don't know. I mean, we can't say, prove to me that you really want to swim, but we can see if they're swimming, you know, and if they're not, they have to leave.
Well,
It would
let's
be-
be clear too. It's not going to be fun to go up there and not swim in a lane. I mean, I think if things are really, spelled out very transparently so that everybody understands and knows that they are subject to being asked to leave, then they know up front what the requirements are. I mean, it's hard to know.
It is. And Bill, I want you to know I'm feeling that sick feeling in my stomach where I don't know if what I'm suggesting is the right thing either way, because I do feel we have a responsibility to those, who pay so that we can have the few amenities that we have in our town. And this is a big one, and it's summer. I absolutely am 100% against opening the pool up as an open swim. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's how I feel about that. I'm just looking for a way where it's not ridiculous and we can do it properly. And that's why I wanted Jared to chime in and see how it can be done. But I mean, we have a few other things, like maybe one thing we could do today is let's get serious about one idea to get a very specific proposal on how we would solve for all the problems of that one idea. And we can revisit this at the next meeting.
Oh,
You were saying 3 lifeguards, is that correct?
Yeah, if we were just gonna do a 4-hour block,
Mm-hmm.
then we could do it with 3 guards, so you'd have 2 on stand, because with the lane swimming, there's quite a distance there, so you'd have 1 on either side of the pool, and then somebody in the front office. And
What about someone who's going to wander around constantly cleaning? I mean, the restrooms would have to be open, no concessions.
This
Do we have to have restrooms open?
That's why you stay for an hour.
Yeah, this doesn't include opening the restrooms or concessions.
Okay, but there are still surfaces that would have to be wiped down.
Well, then
Things are going to be touched.
that possibly could be done. I mean, if they're coming in and putting their stuff down at the end of the lane and start swimming, and they get out and pick their stuff up and leave. I mean,
Yeah.
there's not going to be a lot of common area scenarios. But one reason we wanted 15 minutes between when one session ends and the next one begins was to be able to address anything that comes up like that.
Right.
Your quote unquote like adult in the room. So you can let lifeguards focus on being lifeguards, and you can let your adult in the room be in charge of social distancing and oversight of, whatever the requirements are.
Right.
Well,
Right.
and you also keep in mind that adult in the room is not part of this scenario, so that your cost just went up
Right.
there. So that would be the first person scenario, but basically the way we set it up is if it's, because I don't know that it makes sense to do this all day. But it might make sense to do a 4-hour block in the morning and then a 4-hour block in the evening. So with just that, the guards, you could do it from the guards' perspective with just, with 3, if you add the adult in the room to that, or if that replaces one of them, I don't know. But probably you would have to add it to it, because otherwise you don't have any safety net in case someone can't come to work. Then you're down to 1 guard. So, but the basic scenario would be 3 guards, 2 up, 1 in the office. They would rotate every 45 minutes. They'd be off stand and checking things and have 15 minutes to kind of disengage and then go to a different position in another 45 minutes.
So let's say that I'm a mom with an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old who wants to lane swim. Can I sign up and bring my children to swim laps and be there so I don't want to swim, but my children want to swim. Can I sit on a chair or, take up 2 lanes and be there to kind of watch them as they get their exercise? And what would that count? Does that count as, how does that figure into your numbers?
I think you would have to allow for that. You might even have to allow for, and I don't even know if this is possible. That's why we're having a discussion. Jared, would it be possible to take some of the lanes and cut them off at the deep end?
They don't run
They
shallow.
only run in the shallow end. We don't have the long lanes anymore.
Oh, we don't have the long ones. Okay.
No, we just have the cross lanes in the shallow end.
Better.
But
Like-
that's kind of the situation that we're concerned with is the prospect of an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old coming in lap swimming for 45 minutes. They're going to be in there playing. In
Yeah.
order, I would imagine. That's why I think, again, limiting it. When so few people are going to be able to use it, if we're going to say that it is for exercise and lap swimming, I think we need to set it up so that we have a legitimate expectation that that's actually what it's going to be used.
I don't know if y'all read the what Stewart Heights is, their community pool here. They've got their opening. They've got, it's a whole nother can of worms, and it's completely next level than anything that we're talking about. But they've got 25 groups of 2 chairs. They're putting 6 feet apart. They cannot be moved. They're being cleaned every day at the end of the day. They've set a limit, at 100 people in the pool. The duration limit is 3 hours. And the pool's at 80% capacity, which is 80 heads or 20 of 25 chairs being used. Then they're on notice that their time limit is, that they're within a 3-hour window. They're not, of course, having concessions or swim lessons or pool parties or anything, but I mean, that seems ambitious.
That seemed dangerous.
Yeah.
I tried not to say that, but I had to. That would worry me to death.
Yeah.
That's to figure out how you want to be quoted.
Yeah.
What we're talking about here is,
But and I just wanted to kind of put it out there, like as a comparison of
Yeah.
what we're talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we can look at the whole spectrum of what's possible. And, if you want to look at national statistics, 31% of pools, community pools, are not opening at all. 46% are awaiting guidance from, I guess, their governors. And of the ones that are opening, only 5% are opening at regular capacity, and 18% are doing it with truncated offerings. That's I'll quote what I read in the newspaper.
what's the percentage of that?
18% of the community pools that are opening.
Yeah, and I think we're to stick with the metaphor, we're at the shallow end of that. I think that's where
We are. And I mean, I think being conservative in our approach or cautious in our approach is where we need to be, for sure. And I think we're all in consensus that having a young staff monitor the social distancing requirements, if we were to pass anything like this, is too much of a burden
Right. Right.
to put on a teenager whose peers, may be wanting to come in and go swimming. And, lifeguards typically put up with a little bit of verbal abuse as it is under the best of conditions. So I would not want to subject, anybody to that kind of responsibility, really.
Right. We're in a situation now, we're probably going to have to talk about our ball fields in a minute, where following the governor's order, people can go out and practice, and they're even throwing out some guidelines for how you can play. Swim team is just one of those seasonal sports that takes place here. We have a facility, we support that, and I am seriously thinking about kids that are headed off to school as well, that this is part of their exercise and sports routine, and it is one thing we can do. I don't know, and this really isn't intended to put you on the spot, Bill, but I always like to ask a question when I'm trying, talking with somebody and we're at different ends, and I don't know that we are. I think we're probably socially at the proper distance from each other on this. But is there a scenario where there is a limited lane swim that you think could make you feel that we are doing the tactically and morally right thing right now?
Yes, but with one caveat, and that is that we asked Bo to reach out to Dr. Hendricks at the health department and get the doctor's take on our plan. And that could, Mayor, that could be you reaching out to Dr. Hendricks. It doesn't.
And that's honestly, that's in guidance with what the governor's, the way the executive orders have dealt with counties. So yeah, I think that's good. I don't know that we would be, knowing Dr. Paul, he's going to go, oh boy, because he wouldn't want to make that decision for us. I suspect it depends on how the question is phrased to him. You'd have to be careful that you weren't leading, because if you were to ask, what would the scenario be under which we could do this? Is that the question? Or is the question, should we do this? Or do you think it's advisable that we do this? What question would you ask of the county health department? Let's look at it that way, going with the governor's executive order.
I think, we tell him that we're considering opening the pool for limited use. And here is our plan on how to do that safely under the current circumstances. And is there any advice you might wish to give us in that regard?
So we're looking at possibly 2 blocks a day, lane swim only, 18 and up, by reservation only, no tag-alongs. Concessions are closed, restrooms are closed. Lifeguards on duty, 1 adult in the vicinity.
Are tag-alongs mommies?
Or tag-alongs what?
Parents?
If you're 18 and up, you shouldn't have to bring your mother with you. I would hope. But that would cover your concern about kids heading off to college. Perhaps they're swimmers and they need to keep up their skills. That would cover them, but not cover the younger kids from the swim team. No, no.
And that, for me, the 18 and over kind of covered two things. One, making sure that people were coming for the purpose we intend it to be used for, but also it would address if no one under 18 is allowed in there, that leaves eliminates the scenario with mom or dad wants to swim, but they've got 2 or 3 kids that they want to be able to play in the wading pool while they're doing it. That eliminates that as well. Entry is limited to whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be 18, but it needs to be in that vicinity. Otherwise, I think Jared's right. We will see those scenarios without a doubt. And I get it, and I feel for them, but the idea is to set up a manageable scenario for usage, and that's not one of them.
Yeah. And then, if should we do this and it is controlled and it is very successful, then, hopefully in the coming weeks, we would be able to make modifications so that more people can come in. Hey, Dan, you're not talking.
Surprised. And also,
I am. I'm shocked.
yeah, I think no, the feed fed. Other folks might be seeing that same thing as well. The feed froze. That's what I'm trying to say.
Oh, okay. So I'm not the only one having connectivity issues.
But politics is the art of compromise, and this whole thing is causing us all to learn some new skills in trying to do this. And it's not the easiest thing to do here is not to just close it. That's not the easiest thing. That's maybe not the most responsible thing as well, but the easiest thing is absolutely not to open it up. That's a completely, in my opinion, irresponsible thing. And I wrote down what you said, Bill, and I'll do exactly that. Could we ask Jared to proceed with a very specific plan with the guidelines that Boyd and Cheryl and Bill and Susanna have all kind of chimed in on?
Sure.
So we know exactly that, and so that we vote on this next time after we have a statement from the county health department. And honestly, that gives us 2 more weeks to see what happens with the numbers in the county.
Right.
Everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Boyd,
Yes, sir.
do you mean that?
Yes, sir.
I mean,
We're not opening the pool. I'm comfortable. And again, like I've said, I think a lot of us are, it's just the nature of what we do. I want the pool to be open. I want my kids, grandkids, and everybody else's to be able to go to the pool. It doesn't have anything to do with this. It has to do with doing what's right for the community as a whole and being careful.
I agree, Boyd.
all right. Moving on. Let's talk about, I got 2 court, I don't know if you guys all got them, 2 emails last night regarding ball fields.
Yes.
Here we go. And I think what we're seeing is just the beginning of the flood. We're all gonna be standing under a waterfall soon. The one had to do, and I wrote back, Dr. Bowman, is that correct? I believe it was Keith Bowman, one of them, who's doing the teenager leagues. The questions he was asking applied more specifically to the county owned fields, not to our fields. And so I wrote him back about that, and he's going to find out what the county is saying about his question. But I could read his email if we wanted, but in general, they want to know what they can do. The governors, and I'll summarize this, and Harry, you've probably read through this too, so correct me if I'm wrong. They're allowing them to play baseball. They want everyone to social distance while they play baseball. They're calling baseball a non-contact sport where the contact is incidental. It's not the way I played baseball, if I remember. But this is the governor's guidance. We, of course, can say, no, you can't use our fields for that. The governor's not saying you can have league play, but he's saying that you can go out and do practice on a baseball field. That's just a very high level general understanding that I have. So Harry, Bill, or I should say Harry, Boyd, or Jared in particular.
Yeah, I think you're right. And they require, same old statement, subject to the ERC, the social distancing, et cetera. And I understand incidental contact, but I don't know how you have players in dugouts and.
No, you can't go in dugouts.
And the pro teams are doing roughly that, allowing play, no fans in the stands, no use of dugouts. And
Spreading the players out in the stands, or
depends on if somebody's got a bunt or not. Yeah, but to be clear, dugouts are off limits. If we do nothing, people can follow the governor's guidelines. Is that accurate, Harry?
yes.
When you say nothing, as I recall, the last decision council made on the ball fields would be that they would be closed to organized use, and that they would only be open for residential recreational use. So, and again, that's just my recollection, but I think we specifically talked about not having them used by organized leagues or something to that effect.
All right, and if I may toss something in here, excuse me. Hold on, I need to mute for a second. Keith Bowman did write back this morning. He said he just got off the phone with Mr. Daniels with the county. He said the county is still on hold for use of the county fields, and they are discussing it. He said they would contact him when they're ready to permit league use. When he does, he'll pass that along to us. So that's the latest. That's as of this morning. That's from the county.
Yeah, Dan, when you said if we do nothing, they can use the field, I assume you meant just open play, that kids could go out there and play. I don't think leagues, I think we would have to approve league play.
Well, I guess what I meant was, if we don't add any restrictions to our parks, then our parks would fall under the county-wide setup. Now, the county doesn't determine what happens in ours. In our parks, the county could, but maybe we do.
As far as the municipal facilities, I don't think, the county facilities within the town, they certainly do, but I think if there are our facilities absent action on our part doesn't make county action applicable to our facilities. I think we have to make that call, or we decide not to make the call, and we're responsible for the outcome of that as well.
Can you put your hands on, while we're in this meeting, specifically what council's directive was on the ballparks? Or maybe you said that clearly a moment ago and I didn't track it.
That is my recollection, and Carol, I don't know if she might have them handy, but
I'm trying to find right now, going through my
it
notes.
looked like you were searching, so I thought that was the case. But
That is also my recollection that they did vote to not allow any organized league use of the fields. But I'll see what I can find.
thank you.
Is organized league use separate from, I've got this team of kids that I play ball with, can I take my team out there to practice even though there is no league?
I think the operative word is organized other than league. If,
Yeah, leave the league out.
you know, if an individual organizes an event with a large number of kids and they go out there and play, the fact that it's not an actual league has no bearing on the hazard created. I think it's the matter of it being organized use as opposed to use by individual residents and their families was my understanding. I can't speak if that was council's intent, but that's the way I understood it.
Jared,
Sir.
have teams been practicing on the fields?
No. It's gone relatively smooth over. We had one occasion where we had, it was probably 2.5, 3 weeks ago. I came by and we had a couple dads out here with probably, I don't know, 12 kids. I asked them, that's to separate if they wanted to, one go to one, take 6 to one field and 5 or whatever it was to the other, but to limit having that many people on the field at the same time. Other than that one little hiccup, it's been like we talked about, a dad out there hitting grounders to his son, or in the batting cage pitching to his son, and that's how it's been for the past month or so.
Okay, I did find in the minutes from the April 27th meeting that after extensive discussion, the council agreed to open the tennis courts for use. They also agreed to open baseball fields for general use, but to be closed to leagues.
I just wanted to add also, that was the way it was advertised to the public through the email blast and Facebook. Ball fields, tennis courts,
Sam,
the citizen use, but not organized use.
Sam, when you turn away, you can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I was reading from that. It basically said those facilities were open to citizen use, but not organized use. That's the way it was communicated at the time.
Thank you.
Would we have consensus to keep things like they are? We also watch the county, watch the numbers, and see if the governor changes things.
I'm comfortable with that.
I am too.
Yes.
Because people are getting to use the space. They're just not getting to use it in an organized way.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that's,
Seems reasonable. All right. And I since we aren't changing anything, I assume we don't need to vote on that.
Nope.
All right. Do we need to touch on, Boyd, the signs that say no on-street parking didn't get done last week. Is that, can you make sure that that's getting done for now?
We are working on those there. we have to get them and get them up. We do have temporary parking signs over there. But that is something that takes a little bit of time, but we are working on it. And again, I think once officers had an opportunity to interact and educate a little bit, things smoothed out, but permanent signage is coming.
Just as an aside for anybody who's watching and wants to be able to get out with your kids, in the last 4 days, I took my grandkids hiking for multiple hours, twice, picking a trail on Timberlinks where there were no cars, and we didn't encounter anybody. One of them was the day before Memorial Day, and I think it was the day after. There's plenty of space for people to social distance, and the Memorial Day was what I was most concerned about, that we would just be inundated, and we weren't. Boyd, you concur, with that from Mike?
Right. There were, again, some minor issues, but all said and done, it was a pleasant surprise, the level of use and the cooperation associated with it.
And for citizens' benefit in particular, I talked with some citizens who were concerned that what we would have is James Boulevard being filled with cars and what the options are there. And also talked with Mike about it. We just, without an ordinance that says no parking and no parking signs going up, we can't do that. And people also had people visiting them. That street's wide, and unless residents wanted to see no parking signs up and down that street, we can't stop people from parking there. You can do it temporarily, but anyway, it worked out, and it seems like it might be under control. And word's getting out that this isn't the best place to come. And the national park's still not open, so we'll have to deal with that when it happens.
And Loretta just texted me and said some of the signage around Rainbow Lake actually went up today. So
oh, excellent.
Some of it's going up. Which ones exactly, I'm not sure, but as I said, we're in the process of getting up what we need.
All right, thank you, Loretta. So no action needed on parks, it sounds like. Boyd, you or Jared would be aware of anything else that we wouldn't be aware of?
Everything else is operating as discussed. If we move away from, once we're through with rec, I do want to touch on a thing or two in general operations, just to make you aware of.
Yeah, all right, we'll come down to that. So does anybody else have any rec concerns right now?
No.
All right, let's see what's next on our agenda. Yeah, so and I'll start this and then hand it over to Boyd, and you can take over with the other things you wanted to bring up. There was I don't want to pick on any particular media source, but there was a media source that wrote something that upset employees, part-time employees at the library, that said in plain writing that they had been laid off, and they haven't. And the town doesn't even do that for the library, because under state law, the library has to operate as an independent organization. So, not naming any names, Boyd, do you want to address that just to clarify?
Yeah, I think it stemmed from the discussion about part-time employees after we got through the period that council approved for paying them, and general discussion primarily with regards to MAC. But it was reported that it was in relation to the library employees. And as the mayor stated, I can't lay them off. Karen and the employees of the library technically work for the library board. So it wasn't even an issue on the table, but yet it was reported that way. And as you can imagine, I had some discussions with employees that were being impacted but had not discussed it with them, so it came as quite a shock. Luckily not accurate ultimately.
Yeah, that's what gets printed matters. It affects the lives of people. And we had employees that were upset. They were upset all the way up and down the line. So it created a lot of extra work. So that kind of thing matters to us. And I'm going to remain vigilant to point it out. And I contacted the publisher. So I think we've done what we can do. We have no control over that, though. Obviously. All right. And I think operations wise, Boyd, you said you had more?
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that starting this Saturday, we are going to have the transfer station open from 8 to 4. So operations there will be pretty much back to normal. We are looking at further expansion of operations at Recycle. Loretta's been in contact with Orange Grove to see what works for them, both in terms of hours and if we are at a point where we might want to return to normal operations if we require face masks while you're in there, just looking at the various options there. But wanted to let you know that the transfer station is going to open up on Saturday, and we're looking at how we can expand operations at Recycle without detriment to the safety of the operation. So we're continuing to look at those things.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
I expect that you have already looked at this and found out the reason why you couldn't do it, but is there a way to have the cars that are pulling through pull in between the paper bin and in between the cardboard bin? Since that's the majority of it, is there any way to spread the glass out so that everything was accessible in a straight line?
The cardboard and single stream are all compactors now, and they're lined up perpendicular to the traffic flow. So,
But it has to do with electrical.
right, they're hardwired and they're not going anywhere. So that's where they have to be. And I don't know that it would make much difference. You also have to look at the access to the containers and what the trucks need to be able to get those pulled and moved. So we can look at it again, but I don't know that there's a better scenario when you consider 3 of the 4 containers that are in use are hardwired and can't be moved.
Well, it can be, but at some expense.
Well, it can, but at significant cost.
All right. Anything else in the other category of reopening anyone has? All right. Communication from the mayor. I guess the only communication from the mayor is about why communication from the mayor is on here. And Harry, if you can chime in. You know, we've had some.
I'm sorry, Mayor, but you did skip an agenda item.
What did I skip?
Well, we have it on for budget discussions. I'm not sure.
Let me get over there. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's pretty big.
I think on this, we have actually touched on quite a bit, but there is some updates we need to provide you guys and just a little more direction. And with that and what we've dealt with so far in the meeting, I think we're where we'll need to be.
What do you have for us?
All right, we went back and made the changes as directed. and putting the $10,800 over for upgrading email. We did in the process find one small error where a row had been hidden. So there was a $2,700 increase on that. It's just something that we found. The only other change beyond that that came in and we hadn't anticipated or wasn't even on the radar was we just received notice from the state that from the state insurance plan that our premium increase will be 5.4%. We had not projected that much. So that was an additional $14,000, well over $14,000 increase. So with all of that, starting where we were at a point of putting $26,721 into fund balance. After these things, we were at taking $1,192 out of fund balance. Then we now have the changes to the MAC budget that we will make. And I've also been notified by the Lions Club that they will not be doing fireworks on 4th of July this year.
So we don't have to do the donation?
Correct. So that's a $4,000 reduction on that. So just wanted to run through those changes. I anticipate that we're going to be in the ballpark of where we started in terms of fund balance, and actually be putting some in, but we'll have to run all those numbers. But I want to make sure that you guys were clear on what all's happened in the last week. That literally all played out in the last few days. The only other question I had in the recommended budget was the inclusion of an additional holiday being MLK. That is in the budget. And another thing that I would like to see, and the way I worded it was at least for veterans. Frankly, I think I would lean to doing it specifically for veterans and letting those employees who are veterans have Veterans Day off, or if they have to work, pay them as a holiday. And we never touched on either of those in the initial discussion. So instead of assuming, I wanted to get council's direction on that.
What kind of personnel relations issues? Does that create any personnel relations issues? Or one group of employees get to be off and the other not?
It's possible, but I think I've had several people as we've discussed this, and I haven't discussed it with line level employees, but I don't think there's any hesitation among department heads that if we were to do this for veterans, that would be an issue. You can always have those that are more self-focused, but it's just one of those things that occurred to me this past year, and I think it is important that we recognize them. And I think doing a resolution or proclamation recognizing their service is important. But it just kind of struck me that, you know, a lot of these folks, we do this, and then we ask them to come to the town council meeting on their off time so we can give it to them. I just think doing something that is more symbolic of the fact that they have served the rest of us and the rest of the town staff covering things so they can be off on that particular day in recognition of their service. If I don't know of anything legally that would prevent us from doing it, And I would be happy to discuss the merits with anyone who wanted to question it. from
Harry,
a fairness.
Harry chimed in on that.
Sorry. I don't see a problem with it other than perhaps other people feel like they're not being treated fairly.
It's probably only relative. I hate to use the word insignificant because we're talking about something that involves people's pay, but from a budgetary standpoint, it's probably an insignificant number.
It's very small.
Yeah. Do you need a policy vote from us on that, or general direction? Do you think that needs to be a resolution?
Ultimately, it will. If I can get solid consensus today, I'm fine with that to make the minor change to the budget. And it will come to you as a resolution to amend the personnel policy to add those things to it. So ultimately, it would get a formal vote. But direction, as long as we're solid on consensus, gets us where we need to be for today.
Just the kind of thing that the personnel committee should be weighing in on. It does deal with policy.
If we had folks in place, this was something I would have run by them. Absolutely.
Okay.
And we are continuing to advertise for those positions and others.
All right. Does anybody else have consensus or just direction for the town on that? It sounds like an honorable thing to do.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Me too.
I've always felt a little strange about those things where you tell people to come in and line up so we can all say thank you. It feels like, I mean, I feel like we ought to appreciate people all the time, say thank you always. And sometimes if you're making them do something extra, it doesn't work. So that's one reason I think it's a good idea. Not that we don't do that as well, but we probably don't do it on their day off. All right. So I think you have consensus, Boyd.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
If you're done, I just want to recap it looks to me, just doing numbers on a piece of paper here, that we are probably going to come out, because of the max savings, close to where we were before, including the 7,337 for the manager's increase, the 14,000 for the insurance change, the $2,700 that was found on a missing line. I mean, it's all going to work out about the same way.
I think it's going to be close, and I think we'll have a good, solid budget again. And I want to again point out that I understand that there are some sections of this budget that were not what they normally would be, simply because, again, I have no idea what a couple things are going to look like. Beyond that, I'm very comfortable with this, and it puts us in a position to operate well through the year, but have a much stronger than required fund balance. And we can revisit major projects down the road if we see that we're in a better position than anticipated. So I think it's a safe and solid scenario moving forward.
All right. Does that satisfy everything we need for budget? Because it sounds like we're going to be ready for the next budget. I mean, to vote, the first vote at the next meeting. Everybody agree?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then for citizens, obviously there'll be comments allowed that time, but then the hearing would be at the second budget meeting. And I think the question comes up every time, why don't you have the hearing at the first budget meeting? And that's generally because if it doesn't pass on the first, you may not have the second. You wouldn't need a hearing.
I mean, that's the way we have generally done it, at least in the years I've been involved in that. At this point, there is generally some level of consensus with council So we get to that first vote to make sure that that is the budget that's in play, and then have the public hearing subsequent to that, but in advance of the second reading. Just seems to make sense, but it could be done either way.
Okay. Is everybody okay with proceeding the way it's been done in the past?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Then moving on from that to, and I want to go back where I started a minute ago, just communications from the mayor. And I'm just going to throw this right to Harry Cash. Does the council have talk to us about order of events and citizen comments? We just want to do it right. From time to time, it does seem to be absolutely reasonable that the council narrow focus in a meeting and exclude some items. If they did it on a regular basis, they would deserve to not just have their feet held to the fire. Their feet might need to be pushed in the fire, but that's not been the case. But it's become controversial lately, and all we want to do is do it right. Do we need to change something in our municipal code to clarify?
Well, I think the way the code is written right now, you need to have everything on the agenda. Last time at the last meeting, I looked at the provision about waiving, whether you could waive one of the particular orders of business. Can you waive that at the meeting, at a prior meeting? I don't have that in front of me. It doesn't say that you can't waive it previously, but the way it is written, it intimates to me that if you're going to waive a portion of your agenda items, you need to do it at the hearing for which it is scheduled, because it references by a vote of the members at the meeting. Now that creates a hardship in a couple of ways, because people see the agenda and they see, you know, citizens' opportunity to address council or whatever, and there's an expectation that they're going to be able to speak. At that meeting, the town council, those that are present, can vote to waive that, which just, you know, may disappoint some people who either appeared or called in to speak. But I think that is the way it is written. And I think that's the way it's intended. You could amend to provide that that the council present at a meeting can vote to waive any of those lists of items at the next meeting. But it doesn't presently specify that you can do that. It says this is the agenda, and the agenda can be waived by a majority of those present at the meeting.
All right, I want to hear from anybody else who wants to speak, but to get to the end of what I think we ought to do is I would like for you to write something up, you know, working with Boyd for us to consider at a subsequent meeting in order to correct this. I would not want to be any part of a situation where people showed up to speak and then you voted to not allow them to speak. That just, I don't like that. So we need to fix it. But I also think the council should be able to say, we're going to have a meeting today and we're going to talk about this one issue. And so we're suspending everything else. Anybody else want to chime in on that? I'm going to assume you're all frozen.
They're moving.
You can actually move. Let me ask it differently. Does anybody disagree with that?
I think you just don't put it on the agenda.
Well, he said we can't.
That has been a problem here recently, because the charter does provide that the order of business will be, you know, these 6 items or whatever it is, but they can be, any of those items can be waived by a vote of the majority of the council members voting or present, I guess, or voting at that meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you want, I've got that. It says, at each meeting of the town council, The following regular order of business shall be observed unless dispensed with by a majority vote of the members present. And then it lists 7 things, including the adjournment. And that is in the code as opposed to the charter. So council can change that.
We can clean it up via resolution.
You would clean it up via ordinance. You would change this ordinance with a new ordinance.
Yeah.
So we can just draft an ordinance that would change that to allow changes at the meeting or at a prior meeting. Then that you should be fine, because we're not just talking about citizens' opportunity to address council. So you would want the ability to dispense with some things at a ongoing meeting if you need to, but you also need the ability to do it in advance of that meeting as well.
Seems like this just cleans it up and allows you to have a special called meeting for a specific purpose.
Right.
Without raising expectations that you run the risk of dashing if you have to vote.
Right.
I think it makes sense.
Sounds good to me.
Do you need a vote on that, or can we just move in that direction with council?
We can just work on that
Okay.
and put that together.
Okay. If possible, if we could have that the next meeting, that'd be fantastic. Let's
Shouldn't
just
be a problem.
get this done and do it right. That's all I have. Any communications from committees or boards? We've already heard from the MAC board, so that would count as that. Nope.
Nope.
Any communications from council members?
No.
Nope.
Nope.
All right.
One quick thing, and I just want to clarify this because somebody texted me asking about the MAC. In terms of cleanup after the event is over, will the volunteers just kind of make sure that everything is sanitized? That was my
Yeah.
thought. So I just wanted to ask the question. She wanted clarification.
Yes.
That'll be part of the rental agreement as to how that'll work.
Okay.
All right, tentative agenda. It's budgets in there, right?
We'll add a budget ordinance, first read. We also we'll have a resolution to award a contract for a stormwater project over on Jane Cove, which I wanted to mention anyway. That road is failing. It's collapsing. We're not sure exactly how dire. If it becomes an emergency, we may need to move forward, but we have gone through the bidding process and everything and intend to have that at this next meeting for approval as well. If we have a major failure there, then I may need to move forward in advance of that, but the hope is that's not the case. But I wanted to at least make you aware that we have that hanging out there.
Do we want to shoot for having a resolution regarding the pool?
There would not need to be a resolution for that.
We voted by resolution to close some of these things. Will we not need one to reopen them?
I don't think that vote was by resolution, but I'll go.
Wasn't? Okay.
The resolution that was passed in conjunction with this related to the state of emergency and providing me additional authority during that state of emergency. Specifics about openings and closures, I think, were held outside of that particular resolution.
All right. Happy to be corrected. All right. I think we're done, and I apologize for a 3-hour meeting, folks. This is, here's to better times, and thanks to the staff for all the work you've done on the budget to make it easy for us to go through and just where we are. So maybe next time we're approving a budget.
Well, we appreciate everything from the council, and, you know, each year you go into it and you go, man, this one is just crazy. But it's for a different reason, you know, and didn't anticipate what we're be dealing with this year, but it's made it interesting. But I certainly appreciate the council's attention to the detail and what we're trying to accomplish and why, and your support in doing that.
All right, with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn if someone would like to make it.
So moved.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Not roll call on that one. We're done. Goodbye.
Y'all have a good afternoon.
Thanks.